That recently, when we were making the strategy for young people, we'd use Naila Kabir's framework of voice, choice, and negotiation, and saying, do you find your voice? Do you have the choice? And can you negotiate for it? So your example of the adolescent girls finding their voice, negotiating for the bus, and then making it happen is a great example. And what you like you said as well, to then integrate life skills, I think is a very useful framing for that. So as part of the girls and they're building their agency to do this is fine. But when it comes to the boys, and I was, I met one of the members of the accelerator, Ikomundo, and I was asking her the same question, saying, why would boys give up anything? So this is like me having all the privilege of just coming home and lazing in the bed and not having to do the housework when my sister is going to do this and doing everything. And you come and tell me that it's a good thing for you to do the housework. It's like Tom Sawyer painting the fence, yeah? So how do you convince boys and men to do this?
Yeah, I don't think it's that simple though, because I think when you talk to young men, there's often, what is kind of being referred to as male toxicity around what their expectations that they have too, that box them in from their perspective as well, right? So they feel pressure to earn, they feel pressure to behave in certain ways that can be very aggressive. It's a lot of expectations that we may not, and then they're not all positive. And they're not just like, I get to sit and, play video games where everyone else is doing the work around me, right? There's many cases in which that can turn into isolation, that can turn into not being able to share feelings and express themselves and live their full potential, whatever, creative ways in which they want to do that. And so that sort of, that way that they are boxed in these norms as well can be very harmful too. And so I think that's why when you really work with both boys and girls, men and, young men and young women, you start to realize that this is impacting all of us negatively. And if we can all kind of sign up for a new alternative sort of, positive way to think about everyone having the choice and being supported in their full potential, that is something that's a meeting ground where, we can all meet.
Yeah, and asking boys just to be allies is not working anymore.
Yeah.
Allyship is, it's outdated. It's not.
They have to see what's in it for them.
They have to see what's in it for them. They must realize that patriarchy is as harmful for women as it for men.
I just keep coming back to this conversation around gender norms is, again, really about power and relationships, right? There's a lot of fancy terms we can use. I mean, even the term norms, right? People are like, what does that even mean, right? But, it really is about shared power and relationships. And how do we all choose to be in relationship with each other? And what are ways that we can be more supportive and understanding and really hear each other? Because these constructs that we have are not working for men. They're not working for women. They really aren't helpful.
And now coming back to the context, so we've talked about the people themselves, the boys and the girls, the environment in which they're growing up. And I know teachers play a significant role. Even as part of your accelerator, you've taken the public education system as a critical lever because it has so much power. Is it, one, how do you see the roles teachers will play? And are you seeing evidence of shifting teachers, the norms that they hold in their heads, because they reinforce it so much with the children that they work with to happen?
And it's hardest to do with the teachers, and especially teachers from the global south, where their jobs are not respected. They don't get paid that much, and then they are on duty for everything. But I believe that when you start talking teachers about their own experiences in life, then they see the value of having a gender equity lens in their work much more important, and just an anecdote, and I really love telling this story, is that when we started working in Punjab, there was one teacher who would not come to the training sessions or would come and not participate, and she was only just doing it because the government was asking her to do it. And then, suddenly she became very regular and she came and she started doing it all. And then in September, there was a meeting with all the officials and everybody. And she stood up and she told this story. She said, I come from a wealthy family. My husband has a business of his own. We have a car. We have 2 cars, and I've always wanted to buy a car and drive. But my husband always said, we have a car, this is our car, you don't need to drive. And then they were coming back from some place and they had this argument in the middle of the road, and the husband said, get out from my car. And she said, when I walked back home, I realized that this is not my car, really. I need to actually, it all dawned on me, why am I doing these classes? What is gender equity? What is wrong with my life? She said, I resolved to buy a car, and now I bought a car and I drive myself everywhere. I don't depend on our car anymore. And this was such a powerful story, and it happened because you could experience it in your life, right? The things that, because otherwise gender and norms are just concepts and definitions that you don't apply to your life. But if you do really have experiential work with the teachers themselves, then they begin to see, And also, there are fantastic teachers who go out of their way to pay for a girl who's not been able to study. So there are teachers like that, and if their stories can be shared, I think this is where storytelling and really talking one-to-one and talking to them as a group kind of really helps. And I'm sure there are lot of evidences out there now.
That's going to be interesting, because in this collective of the 12 partners, the first topic that they want to synthesize their shared learnings and experiences on is actually teacher training and how to engage teachers on this topic of shifting adolescent gender norms, because we know they are critical, right? They're critical up the chain to headmasters and school administration and, all levels, and they're critical down to they're the ones in the classroom, often delivering these programs, engaging with youth, engaging with parents, right? So they are the linchpin in many ways to this work. So I think it'll be very interesting to see. There's been a lot of work on this, and again, it is an inside out as well, right? They have to be able to understand how does patriarchy impact their lives in order to really, embrace and get behind, delivering a program that's talking about having these candid and constructive conversations on norms. So I think that'll be, a wonderful contribution to see across contexts. How do they differ again across countries and different kinds of cultural contexts, across different interventions in schools and pathways to working on norms? Where, what are the teachers' role, and how did they, what worked in terms of bringing them on board? I think it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, because I was recently talking to another organization where they talked about initially assuming that when you put women teachers to engage with girls, you find a much more positive outcome because women teachers will be more motivating, and they realized that the men teachers were equally motivating as well, and sometimes the message was even more powerful because it's coming from a man that you can do this, and they were vociferous champions.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, and as the learnings get synthesized, to say what changes it. Because if it's inside out, it's that personal experience and you manifest it. But if it has to be at scale, what can be that outside-in lever that will shift teachers' behavior?
Yeah, it's got to be both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting enough, I think the interesting research happening now too is around at the headmaster school leader level.
Yeah.
And the impact that a female school leader can have is quite high. They've seen in embracing and being able to create the space for many of these conversations, and yet you don't see that many school leaders at that level, right? Yeah. They're allowed to be in the classroom, but they're not allowed to hold leadership positions. Yeah. So I think that's an interesting place to tease out some of these roles too, of what does it look like to have more females headmasters and school leaders.
And I've seen in Haryana, in some schools where there are women headmistress, schools look beautiful, they're clean, they're cleaner, they have, lovely posters.
Talk about gender norms right
Sorry.
Cuts both ways, man.
And more conversations and things like that. Yeah, just an anecdotal thing, but yeah.
Of course.